9 influencers, 9 different strategies. We're analyzing portfolios they published around the April 2025 local bottom. The big question, can they outperform Bitcoin? Some actually did. Each portfolio starts with 10K, split evenly across the picks, or allocated as outlined in their videos. Performance is tracked from the video's release date. Let's start with EllioTrades because his case stands out, and honestly, it's a bit shocking. His portfolio video was published on May 13, 2025, which might seem late. After all, we're looking for entries made closest to the recent market lows. So why include a video released after the rally already happened? Well, because before that, he was simply bearish. This was the first time he flipped bullish enough to actually buy. In the video, he said he deployed 40% of his capital, with plans to deploy the rest on a pullback. But he also added that if Bitcoin broke its all-time high, he'd go all in because he didn't want to miss out. Here's the kicker. Bitcoin did break its all-time high, and then the pullback came. So to simulate his strategy, I allocated 40% on the video date and the remaining 60% right after the breakout, just like he said. He mentioned holding BTC, ETH, and SOL, 20% each, and also some crypto stocks, though he didn't specify any, so I left those out. The rest was evenly split between the other coins he highlighted. Now to his credit, despite entering at what turned out to be the local top, keeping 60% in majors and highlighting that clearly in the video is something to respect. His non-major picks focused mostly on AI and meme coins, which made sense. These two narratives, especially memes, dominated the cycle. Pengu was the standout performer, and a few others outperformed Bitcoin too. Looking at the BTC chart, it's clear. Despite buying the top, the portfolio is slightly above break-even in BTC terms. A quick side note, influencers often say they like buying Bitcoin during sharp corrections because it tends to outperform early in the recovery. Is it correct? In this case, that advice didn't hold up. Bitcoin bottomed on June 22nd, the same day this portfolio stopped bleeding against BTC. I don't really know why influencers keep advising to go full risk on after the rally already happened. The data just doesn't support it. In most cases, it leads to losses, not outperformance. This kind of late entry strategy might work during a strong alt season, but you really need to understand the risk before jumping in. On the USD chart, the result is similar. The portfolio's slightly up from the initial investment, but nothing meaningful since the entries were made at the top. This is what happens when fear of missing out overrides planning. The chance to enter smartly was wasted and resulted in chasing the breakout. At least he had big positions in Bitcoin, ETH, and SOL for some downside protection. Now let's contrast that with House of Crypto, who dropped his portfolio video on April 4th, very close to the local bottom. The market did break down a few days later, so the entries could have been better, but that's the kind of thing you can't predict ahead of time. As for the portfolio itself, the strategy looks somewhat similar on the surface, 60% in Bitcoin and L1s for safety. But only 20% of that is actually in Bitcoin. The rest is split between Sui, Aptos, and Sonic, which leans more toward the risk-on side. The remaining 40% is spread across AI, gaming, and RWA picks. Quite a few of the coins outperformed Bitcoin, but overall the portfolio is slightly underperforming. Still, if you break it down, from April to the early May top and again from June 22nd onwards, the portfolio actually outperformed Bitcoin during those recovery periods. The drawdown happened in between. It lost a fair bit of its BTC valuation during the correction. So when you hear influencers say to go heavy into Bitcoin after a substantial correction and then rotate into alts, keep these charts in mind. If you're going to play the altcoin game, that's your call, but if you want to maximize your chances, check the data before making the decision. Otherwise, you risk following someone, not financial advice, someone who might be great at talking, but not so great at analyzing actual market dynamics. Just to clarify, I've definitely heard that kind of rotation strategy from several influencers, but I'm not trying to pin it specifically on Ellio or House of Crypto. I only use their portfolios as examples to illustrate the data. You can pick any other portfolios and see similar trends. As for the USD chart, this is what happens when you buy close to the bottom. The market did dip slightly lower afterward, but most of the time the portfolio has been up in dollar terms. It even peaked at plus 55% in just 1 month. After the correction, it hasn't reclaimed that level yet, but if the market stays bullish, it's on track to get there. By the way, I just created an X account. You can follow me at Don't Lie Crypto. My first post will be about a big account that shilled a rug pull, then deleted all the promo posts and acted like nothing happened. Next up is VirtualBacon, who shared his latest update during a live stream on March 25th. He also maintains a live spreadsheet where he logs portfolio changes as they happen, which is helpful for tracking real-time decision-making. In this update, he sold off a bunch of lower-cap alts to consolidate into majors. Compared to how he managed his portfolio earlier in the cycle, often holding 20-plus alts, this version is much simpler, with just 10 positions including ETH and SOL. As he explained, the goal this time is to focus on majors and leaders in each narrative. So how did that play out? 3 of his 10 coins outperformed Bitcoin, and because of his heavy ETH allocation, which finally started outperforming, that was enough to push the portfolio into positive territory against BTC. To his credit, VirtualBacon didn't panic sell ETH at the bottom like many others. His portfolio's Bitcoin valuation stayed relatively stable, down just around 11% at the lowest point. The upside has been limited too, but overall, it's been a relatively steady performance. The USD chart tells a similar story. The portfolio dropped around 25% at first, not surprising, since the livestream came right after a local rally and right before the next leg down. But it recovered and has since pushed to a new high. We're starting to see a pattern in this market. Some alts are clearly outperforming Bitcoin and by significant margins. Most still underperform. But if you time your entries well, the odds of catching the right ones aren't terrible. That's the key point. Timing. Ellio, for example, picked Fartcoin, one of the top performers this cycle, but bought it at the local top. Despite the coin doing incredibly well from the March-April lows, entering late meant he underperformed. It's also risky to buy something that already did a 7-8x in just 2 months. It always feels scary to grab it near the lows, but that's where the reward is. Buying after a big rally almost never works. Next up, Ran from CryptoBanter. He shared his picks during a live stream on April 9th, almost perfect timing. He included 3 stocks, and since they're tracked on Dropstab, I added them to the portfolio as well. Out of 8 positions, 5 outperformed Bitcoin. That's solid. It reinforces what I've been saying. If you buy near the bottom, your chances of outperforming Bitcoin go way up. The Bitcoin chart reflects that perfectly. The portfolio gained significant value during the rally and lost some ground during the correction, but never fell below break-even. That's what good timing can do. But let's be clear, I'm not saying Ran predicted the bottom. That would require selling near the top, and there's no evidence he did that. He just puts out a lot of content, and this time, the timing happened to work out. The point of this analysis is to highlight what actually matters, especially when there's so much misleading advice out there. A lot of influencers push the idea of going full degenerate after the rally is already in motion. That's not how you win. In this case, the portfolio outperformed Bitcoin by about 20%. That outcome came largely from strong entries into coins like Hype and Sui after the correction. Solid performers in this cycle. Whether that extra gain is worth the added risk depends on your strategy and risk tolerance. On the flip side, going for lagging plays like Sonic or newer less-known tokens like Grass didn't deliver. That's another big edge of buying into weakness. You can pick the strongest narratives at reasonable prices. Once the rally is underway, your choices narrow. Either buy already pumped coins or take a gamble on dead ones that may never recover. And during corrections, those lower quality alts usually get wiped out. The USD chart tells the full story, nearly a straight climb. The portfolio went up 70%, pulled back during the correction, and now sits close to a 2x. With that kind of entry, it's easy to protect yourself. You're never underwater, you can pull out your initial or use a stop loss with profit locked in. Lab of Crypto, I included her for the first time in a previous video with a portfolio shared near the top, so now let's see how things looked closer to the recent bottom. May 7th was the closest post I could find, not exactly near the bottom, but it's what we have to work with. Compared to the 30-40 picks from December, this time she shared 10 altcoins plus Bitcoin. Once again, the percentages don't add up to 100%, and I'm not the only one noticing it. Her comment section had people confused as well. The clear standout here is ETH with a solid allocation just before its rally began. The core positions are higher cap alts like Ondo, Tau, Near, and Aptos, all of which have done reasonably well. On the lower cap side, 2 out of 3 underperformed. The BTC chart shows something interesting. Even though the portfolio was published right before the broader correction, it still managed to capture ETH breakout. That early strength meant the portfolio only drew down about 12% at its lowest point, and now it's already up in BTC terms. ETH was clearly the driver, but it's also worth noting that most of the picks are at least holding up relative to Bitcoin, even after a pretty sharp correction. The current market still favors a decent number of alts. The USD chart tells a similar story, a 9% drawdown at the June low followed by a new high recently. Considering the timing, that's a solid result. Next up, No BS Crypto. His video was published on March 12. Before we get into the picks and performance, a quick note. He shared his actual portfolio, but also made it clear that if he had to buy alts at that time, he'd stick to just 5, and even then, he said Bitcoin was the better option for the coming weeks. We'll skip analyzing Bitcoin since everyone knows Bitcoin chart, and focus on those 5 alts, Ondo, ICP, Render, Link, and HBAR. Thanks to decent timing, all of them are up. But the Bitcoin chart looks a bit disappointing. Compared to other portfolios shared around this time, which often outperformed BTC, this one moved mostly sideways before the May correction. Since the June low, it started to gain some traction, and as of now, it's almost back to break-even in BTC terms. The USD chart looks better. The portfolio was published before the rally and it just printed a new high, so it might still have its moment. Overall, No BS Crypto made the right call to focus on Bitcoin at the time. These alts didn't offer much relative upside, but the difference isn't huge. If the market continues to rally, this portfolio will likely pull ahead. Seeing these safer, more established names start to gain traction, especially with ETH leading the charge, could be an early signal that altcoin season is on the horizon. Now let's take a look at Becker. He was active and bullish during the market bottom, but didn't publish portfolio videos at the time, so we'll go with the one he dropped on April 26th. The portfolio focuses on AI, RWAs, and meme coins. Some of the picks have been Becker staples for a while now, like AIA's, 0x0, Pol AI, and Desync. Performance-wise, most of these have been disappointing, but there's one clear standout: Pengu. It's done nearly a 4x since the video went live, and that's a statement. Unfortunately, it's just one pick among many, so it doesn't drastically impact the overall charts, but it definitely helps. The Bitcoin chart follows a now familiar pattern: a rally into early May, a correction, and then another push higher. At this point, the portfolio is back above break-even. Without Pengu, though, it wouldn't be in the green in BTC terms. The USD chart tells a similar story. Most coins haven't performed well, so there's nothing spectacular here, but the portfolio just made a new high and is now up 35%. At the June low, it was down 22%. Considering how high-risk most of these picks are, the downside this time wasn't too brutal. Now something new: Jung and Deutscher. Together, let's start with Miles. On April 14th, he published a video where he said he was only looking for short-term trades. On the other hand, Jung completely vanished. He went inactive on YouTube and only returned when the market started bouncing back in a big way. It's not the first time. He did the same during the summer of 2024. Now back to Miles. He shared 7 picks for potential plays. A lot of them are down, but when we look at the charts, it gets interesting. During the first rally, this portfolio actually performed really well. Definitely one of the better performers out of all the ones we've covered today. So as a short-term play, it worked, but there's something more important here. What can we learn from how Miles, Brian, and others are behaving? Not just what they say. Let's throw Becker into the mix too. He was actively bullish on X during the bottom, but didn't publish any portfolio videos during the best buying window. I've seen a lot of hate toward influencers in the comments, and maybe some of it is deserved, but they're not stupid. At least I don't think so. What they do can actually be useful, if you watch what they do, not what they say. They avoid posting bullish content when the market's down because they know what the response will be. People are hurting from losses and many will lash out. Plus, views drop when the market goes sideways or down, people check out, attention moves elsewhere. On top of that, sponsorships dry up. Projects hold off on promotion until the market is green again, so from their perspective, it's just smarter and more enjoyable to post bullish content when the market is already pumping. Now, this is where it gets useful for us. Even if some influencers do keep posting in bear phases, others either go silent or shift to different types of content. That behavior is a great signal of market sentiment. If you notice the top influencers going quiet, posting neutral or bearish content, or when portfolio videos are only talking about safety, sticking to BTC, ETH, SOL, the coins that are most likely to survive, then odds are high that it's actually a good time to start buying. But when you see the opposite, every big name posting degenerate picks, portfolios with 40 coins, daily portfolio updates, and constant hype, that's usually a sign that you've already missed the best entries. At that point, you need to ask yourself if you're willing to chase momentum in an overheated market. That's all for today. Numbers don't lie.